What's up? Have you ever wondered if your choices actually matter? If you have any agency in the world? Or have you ever thought, like, is there any way to do things any differently than you're actually doing them? You're thinking of like fatalism. Well, you're in luck because they were going to talk about, like, do we have free will? This is the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Danny Huberty. Randy, what's up, Randy?
Yo, Danny. Yeah, and before we get into it,
Oh, yeah.
we
Good.
are looking for episode ideas or questions or concerns. So if you have any of them, down in the comments or the show notes is our email. You can just let us know any episodes you'd like to hear, anything's burning a hole in your brain, and we'll answer those questions. But yeah,
Yeah, we'll
back
try to do like
to
all of them.
yeah, back to that great movie, Free Willy.
Free Willy.
Yeah,
I never actually saw it anyway, which is funny too,
I'm not
because,
sure I did either.
yeah,
Yeah.
what are you going to do? Anyway,
But do we have free? It's a great question because I think about this all the time. Because, okay, so looking back on life, there's no way you could have done anything differently. But
no,
looking
because you did it.
forward, is there a possibility you could do it differently? That's the question.
Well, and that's the weird thing, right? Is that I couldn't imagine life any different than it is now because I've done all those things, right? And I think about this a lot because people, a lot of times, I think they'll look at their past and they'll be like, I wish this didn't happen, or what if X happened, or what if Y happened? It's like, well, that's imagining a totally different plane of reality. Like, there's no way to change one thing, I don't care how small or big, without affecting everything else. So, I think about that a lot. Like if I didn't go to this college or something or that, whatever, I wouldn't have met these certain people. I wouldn't have, if you really start to think about it, so much of your life is tied to these decisions that you made or didn't make or whatever. And so is it possible to have anything other than this life that you're having now?
And also at the same time, are we just living in these like multiplex parallel universes at every moment, every option like you take, just it
What
just
are you
separates
thinking
into
about
two
because of the
separate
quantum computer at
universes?
Google? And did you see that?
No, I didn't.
Well, this is actually relevant, so I'll mention it. It might have actually been why I was thinking of this. I have no idea. I was just thinking of this last night.
Okay,
But
do tell.
so Google, the quantum computer, their research department or whatever, they released a paper in Nature. I guess their new quantum computer or their new qubits or whatever solved this complex problem. It was basically a benchmark problem. They said that like regular computers would take millions of years or whatever to solve, and it solved it in 5 minutes. Great, awesome.
Ooh.
And the lead researcher said that alluded to the fact that this is because there's some theories in quantum mechanics that these interactions depend on parallel universes. So that because the qubits each store states, possible states, that his idea is that effectively that the calculations happen in parallel universes simultaneously.
Ooh. That's pretty
And
cool.
there is, yeah, and there are, I don't want to make this sound like too fantastic, right? There are theories in quantum mechanics and stuff that do rely on parallel universes and whatnot. We haven't proved anything. But it was interesting. And I think that's another interesting one, like this idea that, every choice or everything that happens creates a new, so, if you have two choices between two things and you do A instead of B, B was still an option. So there is a path where you chose B, right? Even though you didn't choose B, you chose A. So I think
Hmm.
that is an interesting way to think about it. That opens up a whole nother set of possibilities and can of worms. But yeah,
Yeah. So eh, it's I think it's like yes and no is my answer to this one. Do
that's
we have
helpful.
Yeah,
I
I
love those
know, right?
answers because it's usually true, but
Yeah.
it's also like,
Yes
not
and
helpful at
no.
all.
Well, because it's quite possible. And I tend to live my life as though I have agency,
Wait, I
but I
think most of
also yeah. Well, I wouldn't say most people
well,
do.
yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people are just like, they'll complain about everything
Yeah, it's
and
true. Yeah.
instead of actually changing it. So like I try and believe like I live my life as though I have agency, but I also, hope that the universe is benign and like smiles down upon me in case it's not true.
Okay. That wasn't really a yes and no answer, but that's fine.
Really?
I know, it kind of was. I'm just kidding. Yeah, well, it's a tough one, right? Because like, so there's in philosophy, there's a view called compatibilism where they argue that free will is compatible with determinism, right? Causal determinism. And
Hmm.
I think it was Bossi von Frazen wrote a paper, but he gives this example. So he says, imagine you have a person and they have a choice they can make between just like call it A and B, right? And you implant a chip in their head unbeknownst to them, so that if they go to choose A, they will choose B. The chip will be activated. but they choose B on their own. So that choice was determined, right? It was predetermined choice. They couldn't do anything but choose B because they tried to choose A, the chip would be activated, but they choose B anyway. So it's still free
Ah, so
choice,
did they
right?
should, yeah.
But it was a
Mm-hmm.
predetermined choice. So that's like causal determinism. There's also like fatalism though, that we have a fate sort of that's playing out a life that we're living, and that we don't really the choices that we're making, they feel like they're that we're making choices for ourselves for real, like it's agency. But in reality, it's not. There's all these other factors going on. Like I always like Nietzsche's version of it, where like
Hmm.
he conceived of freedom as basically acting in such a way that you wouldn't possibly do anything otherwise because it's who you are. So that's free
Mm.
choice, but it's also fatalist because it's you're being so authentic that there's no way you would have done otherwise, right? Those choices align with who you are. Does that make
Hmm.
sense? Sort of? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. And it's there's so there's something kind of similar. How like we have two halves to our brain, and they say there's like the rational and the creative part. And so they do like one part of our brain kind of makes up stories for what's going on. And
Yeah.
so I've heard how with some people with like severe seizure disorders, what they'll do is they'll cut the connections between the halves of their brain. And
Really?
yeah, they do that so that if the person has a seizure, it generally only happens in one place in the brain. So if they have a seizure, they never completely lose consciousness. They'll always have like one half of the brain left while the other one
Is
reboots.
is that
And
better?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. But there are some funny things that happen to it, whereas like you do things and you don't have a good explanation for it. Like they'll
Oh.
like I think there's because the visual part and the reasoning part are different, like the story making part are different halves of the brain. And so what'll happen is they'll like give you a visual cue that says like pick up the snow shovel, and then they'll ask why'd you pick up the snow shovel, and the guy's like I have no idea. And or like there was another experiment where they showed him a picture of a naked woman, and he just started grinning from like ear to ear, and they're like why are you smiling? He's like I have no idea why I'm smiling, doc, but let's keep up doing this exercise. I love it.
That's interesting. So it's like your ability to rationalize and storytell is disconnected from the things you're doing.
Yeah,
Well,
so
that's
maybe this whole idea of like, do we have, are we able to, do we have choice is kind of just a story we tell ourselves.
well,
Like,
that's I think is accurate, right? That we are, look, at the end of the day, we're meaning makers, right? We want to understand ourselves, our world, we want to make it intelligible to ourselves, right? We want to make sense of these things. And we do that by telling stories, by rationalizing, by explaining things. And it's interesting how many, if you think about this, always interested me. Like if you look at all the people in the world, all the different stories that they're telling about the same stuff, and it makes that stuff so wildly different based on the perspective you're looking at it from, because that narrative looks at it very differently. That always fascinated me, like, because it just shows you that like so much of what we think is actually real in the concrete world is just interpreting the same data a slightly different way. And
hmm,
I think that's interesting because that also could explain our problem with like agency and free will and understanding, which is it's more the story that we're telling ourselves about ourselves that maybe after the fact of the choices and events happening.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's not like Epictetus said it's not what happens to us in this
Epictetus.
world. It's
Their
Epictetus,
names are hard to
however you
pronounce, I
pronounce,
know.
yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
It's not what happens to us in this world. It's what we tell ourselves about it, the story we make up about it. And
Yeah.
yeah, that could be it. Like, because you see this with like these narcissists and the sociopaths who like literally believe they're God's gift to the earth. And it's like, well, I mean, clearly that's not true, but they believe it's true. So, you know,
Yeah.
they would probably just tell themselves that, yeah, I wanted it to be this way and yada yada yada.
Yeah. No, I think that that is accurate, right? You do, I mean, what we tell ourselves becomes the reality that we also experience, which is really interesting. But I think the interesting about this too is because I think when you think about your choices that you make and all, it's easy to, I think it's easy for a lot of people to fall in that victimization mindset, right? Where like you have no control over anything, and then so you're not making choices. but you can tell yourself a story where you can make choices too. And I think it's a much better approach. Whether we have free will or not is almost immaterial, right? What matters more is that we have a story or a narrative that gives us that ability to have agency. Because then with it, we can at least try to change our lives, and at least try to have some responsibility for who we are and for what we're doing.
Mm. That's a good point.
Because I mean, if it was really if it was all determined, there would be no reason to do anything, and you would still do stuff,
Mm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky question, and I don't know the answer to it, but it's like pretty much everything we still don't know.
All hard
I mean,
questions. We don't.
yeah, I mean, I always think about what happens after death, before death. I mean, you think about all these people that are still imprinted in your brain. Like I'm still trying to impress my grandfather, and he's been dead for over a decade. And like all this stuff that's imprinted in my brain, like there was a moment where he clicked from alive to dead. And like
Yeah,
what happened, you
yeah.
know?
It is weird, but the funny part is that you're still trying to impress him because he had such a huge influence on who you are that that's still a way of you sort of telling the story to yourself, right? And
Hmm.
it's still a way of like honoring him and he's still living with you in a sense. I always find that really interesting too. It's like, we wouldn't be the people we are without those people, but then they're just gone. It's really weird. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's gonna be us someday.
Yeah. Well, that's the other side of it, right? Which is that, I mean, at the end of the day, what does our actions really matter? I mean, the sun's going to burn out, the earth's going to be gone,
Yeah.
eventually,
Yeah.
at some point, there'll be nothing.
I had a friend who went to a monastery not too long ago, and when he came back, I mean, he seemed like a changed man, and he was like a lot more relaxed. And I was like, what happened to you there? What did you learn?" He's like, "I basically just learned that none of it really matters."
Nope.
And I was like, "What? That's so cool."
I always like the existentialists too, because it's like they realize like they don't, none of this matters, but that also, and it sounds like, and they believe that when we die, we just get eaten by worms. There's nothing after that. And
Yeah.
it sounds terrifying and really depressing sometimes. But when you think about it, it also is really freeing. Because if none of this matters and if I'm just going to die anyway, it's like, well, then why don't I just live my life? Because
Hmm.
this is the time I have here. This is it. It might be long, it might be short, but I have this time and I have it. That's the only thing I have is now, right? I don't have anything
Yeah.
in the future. I can't, assume that I'll have anything. So this is it.
Yeah. I like what's his name? Zorba the Greek, where he says life is trouble, only death is not. To truly live is to undo your belt and go looking for trouble. I'm just like, yeah,
There you
this
go, right?
guy. Yeah.
It is funny though, because it is true. I mean, in some sense, none of this matters either. And I mean, we're all just telling stories, so what's it?
This is the trickiest thing is that you never know when you're gonna die.
Well, no, you don't.
And yeah, and so it's like I think about this all the time because it's like, how do you best optimize your life so that you can live to the best? Like, for instance, pizza. I mean, I love pizza.
I love
I have a
pizza
feeling
too.
that's the thing that I'm going to regret the most on my deathbed is
I
I
have
didn't eat
pizza like
enough
once a
pizza.
week.
Yeah, well,
I love it.
you're lucky. If I had pizza once a week, I'd be 400 pounds. And so therein lies the issue is like where I want to be physically is not conducive with eating pizza on a regular basis. And so, but I have a feeling that when I get to die, I'll be like, man, I wish I would have eaten more pizza. And
Well, that is the
yeah.
tricky part, right? Like,
Or I was thinking about it, how terrible would it be if finally you knew when you were going to die? Like, let's say you got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. They're like, you have 3 months left. Now you're going to die, do all the stuff you want to do. And I'd be like, oh, that's awesome. Now I can eat pizza. Except now I'm too sick to my stomach to eat anything, and I can't eat anything. Like, that would be the worst torture ever.
well, I mean, that's a possibility, right? Well, that's the tough part too, because you're talking about, most of our choices are involving trade-offs, right? It's
Hmm.
doing something and not doing something else. Every choice at least involves not doing the negation. So
Hmm.
when we're choosing, we're always not taking that other route, and that could always be something we regret later. So asking ourselves too, like, I think that's the important thing in having a narrative where your choices matter, because at least then you're doing things that hopefully you value and you won't have those regrets.
Right. Or so we think we're having these choices. But what if we're just like Sims? What if we're just bots programmed in a computer program
Totally possible.
to do this one thing, but to have this feeling like we had the opportunity to do this other thing?
Yeah, totally possible. I mean,
Yeah.
the Matrix thing's hard because I mean, well, you've
It's
seen how
getting weird. It's getting closer and closer every
well it
day.
is. Well, you look at
Oh my God.
you look at the advancements in like virtual reality. Like if you, I remember I played. I think it was the first PSVR PlayStation Virtual, and I was blown away by how good it was. Because I mean, I tried like I remember when Nintendo made that like the headset that you wore that was all red lines, and it was
Yeah.
like sort of three. You know, it was really yeah. I mean, it's gotten very good. So I can imagine a time where the graphics are indistinguishable from the world in a sense. And they even and with Neuralink and stuff coming out now, they're testing it on people. You know, I mean, if that
Totally.
brain machine barrier gets basically destroyed, there's no telling what'll happen, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. That was off topic a little bit,
Crazy.
but that's okay.
Yeah. Could you imagine one day if they have like free range chickens that were really only hooked up to a VR headset that imagine they were free range? These are like
That would
VR free
be
range chickens.
that'd be so effed up. Well,
I
I
could
think they're
totally see
free
a
range.
South
Who
Park
cares?
episode about that. Holy
Oh my
cow.
God. That would be funny
Uh,
though. Poor
yeah.
chickens. Well,
Yeah. I mean, they're living out on the range, home
yeah.
on the range.
Well, this is the
And you
other
know, is it any?
that's the other crazy thing though, is reality indistinct? I mean, if you get to the point where reality is indistinguishable from the VR are both reality then. Because if you
Hmm.
can't tell the difference, how do you know? You don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bingo. And I'm sure it has the same effect as the real reality for the
Yeah.
most part, or pretty
Yeah.
close to it.
Oh,
Yeah, so I think that's about that
yeah. So
episode.
do we have free will? Yes and no.
Let us know down in the comments. And while you're at it, we are looking for ideas for episodes or maybe thoughts you're having, questions you'd love to ask us if we met in person or whatever. We could
Pretty cool.
make
Yeah.
episodes about that. So down in the comments or email us down in the show notes. Let us know because we'll be more than happy to make an
Yeah.
episode and we'll even
And
give you a shout out.
we will give you a shout out. And if you enjoyed this episode, we'll be back later this week with another one. Check us out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. This is the Existential Stoic Podcast. Until next time, later, Andy.
Later, Danny.